Have you ever been in a situation where you needed some direction, some encouragement, or even just someone to come alongside and make sense of everything for you? And yet the advice that they gave you, it just didn't make sense at all at that time, and only to find out years later that you came to appreciate that direction that they pointed you in. Jeremiah is told to do some things that don't make any sense given the situation that he and Judah are facing. Yet he obeys. God uses Jeremiah's faithful obedience to assure his people that there is hope and there will be restoration in the end. But it's still going to be a rough and bumpy ride on the way. Come along with me today and we'll take a look at how all this works out. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm David, and today our reading takes us to Jeremiah chapters 32, 33, and 34. We're going to be taking a look at what message is being conveyed through these three chapters and see what conclusions or themes might surface as we go through them. But first, I would like to just establish a little framework of where we are in biblical history when all of these events occur that we're reading about today. Nebuchadnezzar, the prince of Babylon, set out on a campaign against Egypt, and on the way he laid siege to Jerusalem in 605 BC. It was during this siege that the royals and noblemen were taken, along with a teenager named Daniel. Then in 597 BC, Judah rebelled against Babylon, and King Nebuchadnezzar, he returned again, and Jerusalem fell. This time, he took all the professionals, the craftsmen, and the important people back with him, as well as a lot of the treasure that he didn't get the first time. Then the third and final time was in 589 to 587 BC, and it took about 30 months for that siege. Jerusalem, the temple, most of the remaining people, they perished in the famine and pestilence and by the sword, and the survivors were taken captive, and nothing was left. This is also when King Zedekiah tried to flee, is captured, and his rule comes to an end, and so does the kingdom of Judah. It's during this third siege that we find ourselves today as we read through chapters 32, 33, and 34. So at this point in the book of Jeremiah, things are looking pretty grim for the people of Judah. The Babylonian army is besieging Jerusalem. The city's on the brink of collapse, and many have already been taken into exile. It's a time of immense despair. The future looks completely hopeless. Then we get to chapter 32. In chapter 32, Jeremiah does something that seems totally illogical. While he's imprisoned, God tells him to buy a field from his cousin. Now, think about that for a second. The city's about to be conquered, and yet God commands Jeremiah to invest in property inside the city walls. Now, this is not just some land speculation scheme like we see happen today. You know, when the land grabbers come in and snatch up properties cheap, either right before or right after a disaster, and then they're banking on a big payday later on in the future. Well, that's not what's going on here. This act of buying a field is a prophetic sign. It's a physical demonstration of God's promise that one day the people will return and they'll be able to buy and sell in this very country again. It's a tangible expression of faith in the face of what seems like certain doom. This act shows that God's plans aren't limited by our current circumstances. Even when everything looks lost, God is still at work preparing for a future that we just can't see yet. Chapter 33 is often called the Book of Comfort because it's full of incredible promises of restoration. Here, God's message becomes even more explicit. He promises that he will heal the city and restore the fortunes of Judah and Israel. He says, I will cause their captives to return and have compassion on them. But the most famous promise is in chapter 33, verse 3, where God says, call to me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known. This is a direct invitation for us to seek God and to trust in his plans no matter what we're facing. God also makes an important promise about a future king, his promise to raise up a righteous branch of David's line. This is a reference to the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ. It's a crucial promise, and it connects the immediate hope for Israel to the ultimate hope of all humanity. Finally, chapter 34 provides us a contrast. It describes how King Zedekiah and the people of Jerusalem broke their covenant with God. In a moment of panic, they freed their slaves and tried to appease God. But as soon as the Babylonians temporarily lifted their siege, they re-enslaved the same people. This act of hypocrisy highlights a core theme. God's faithfulness is constant, but our faithfulness often wavers. Their betrayal of the covenant showed their lack of faith. Because of their actions, God warns them that their city will fall and they will face exile. God's promises of restoration are sure, but it doesn't mean we won't be punished for our actions. So what's the big takeaway from these 3 chapters? The central theme is that even in the midst of judgment and destruction, God's promise of redemption and new beginnings remains firm. This message actually transcends time. Just as God promised to restore a broken Jerusalem, He promises to restore our lives, our broken relationships, and our broken world. It teaches us that hope isn't just a feeling, it's an anchor based on God's unchanging character and His promises. So no matter what challenges you've been facing today, remember the story of Jeremiah buying that field. Remember, God's promise is to reveal great and hidden things. Trust that God will be working behind the scenes, preparing for a future filled with hope and redemption and new beginnings. I want to thank you for watching today. Keep on reading and know that God has great things ahead for your life.